Thank you for joining us today. So we here are with the next edition of our monthly community webinar series. Before that, I would like to say that to everybody from India, hope everyone is safe. Whichever part of India you are, we are seeing a very high surge in the COVID cases in India at this point. So hope everyone here and around the world is safe and well. Please stay indoors. Thank you for joining us today. So this specific topic, we started off because we had received some requests from our earlier webinars um, focused on use cases that were sort of higher level integrations and solved to extend the product using um, third party services literally. So at that point, there were some requests on how the HTML and Deluge work together on features like pages as well as under the record summaries. So we thought we would have like a good um, our session that would help explain all of the different ways in which HTML can be used with Deluge. So this is a very, very simple way in which someone can improve the user experience of your application without actually having to do a lot of, using any sort of third party service or anything like that. So it is an innate capability of creators. So using that would be much very helpful to all of our developers. So Damien Cregan here, as you all might know, is very popular on forums, and he will be starting the session today. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Damien Cregan to start off.
Hello, my name is Damien Cregan, as Akash has said. I'm a Zoho Creator developer. I'm fairly popular on the forums as I try and help out. Just a little bit about myself. I co-founded BC Cloud Tech with my business partner about 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago this year. We're also a Zoho authorized partner. I'm also a Creator certified developer. In 2019, April 2019, I received a Creator MVP for my contribution to the forums, and I've been using Zoho Creator for over 10 years. I think around 2008, I think was when I discovered it. So, yeah. So my own background would be that I didn't, I'm not educated as a developer. I just worked for different multinational companies and had experience, was always interested in IT. And I suppose I found Zoho Creator, and I really enjoyed it. I learned through the forums. Some of the other users were very helpful in explaining how things worked, and yeah, so that's basically where I came into it, and I like to give back, and that's my yeah. So I like to contribute back through the forums if I can. So we'll begin. Why use HTML with Deluge? Well, as you probably are aware, there are some limitations with the native capabilities that are built in to Creator. One of which would be the record summaries. You can integrate Deluge and HTML within the record summaries themselves, but they're not dynamic. Field values come directly from the form. There's no way to make them dynamic, have them show or hide, depending on certain conditions or anything like that. So combining HTML with Deluge, we can do this from the code instead. Also, you may have reports or a certain style of an invoice, for instance, or certain style of a document that you need to produce that you just can't get using the templates. So then you could either do it like I'll show you shortly, or use a page to do that. The other thing we can do with some CSS, which is along with HTML in our forms, is we can control some of the form with that, and by overwriting some of the native CSS that Zoho Creator uses, and I'll show you, I'll go into a bit of that as well. So yeah, that's, we've just spoken about this. Yeah, the dynamic record summaries, expanding the reporting with our pages and adding extra details to our forms. So let's go ahead and, yeah, so we'll talk a little bit HTML. I'm sure most of you are aware, if you're here, you know, HTML is our hypertext markup language, and it's what's used to display on your web browser. It's what makes the elements in the pages. CSS is the cascading style sheets, and so that's the language that's used to control how the elements of the page look, or the presentation. And Deluge is the data enriched language for the universal grid environment, and that's the scripting language that's integrated with Zoho Creator. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about creating dynamic record summaries. So let me show you. So here we have a record summary, which is just a basic invoice. But there may be a case of where you want an extra line in an invoice, or you want to show an extra column depending on a certain value in the form. And in this case, we can decide to do that by ticking boxes. So we want to show the product detail, and we want to exclude one of the rows within the subform. We'll update our invoice. We'll come back and look at it, and now we'll see that we now only have 3 rows, and we also have our product description added. Okay, so that would be a use case of why we would need to do this. Okay, so just to start off very basic, putting a HTML into a string variable. I'm sure most people who are here know how to create a string, and yeah, this is just the basics of how you do that within Deluge. And just some things to note, but if you are going to do this, is that, you know, HTML elements, most of them will have an opening and closing tag. So if you're opening with your div, I'll show you here. So if you're opening with your div, you close with your div again. Okay, going ahead. So we can also capture our field values within the HTML. So again, we have our opening value here. So this is a H2 or header element, and we have our double quotes to open our string, double quotes to close our string, and then we add our field value in here, and then we add our closing HTML element again. So we do this as much as we need to create our to create the dynamic template that we want to create. And just a word to just to watch out for is lookup fields will always return the IDs of the records, not the displayed value. So if you are adding a lookup field within a string or to a string, then that will always return the ID. So in that case, you'll need to actually fetch the related record first. Yeah, okay. So CSS, so obviously you can add your HTML elements, but then you want to style the element that you're adding. And For this, we use CSS. When we're using CSS within the strings, we would normally do inline CSS in a lot of cases. And in this case, when we're adding inline CSS, we add our style. But you'll notice that we're using double quotes within the string. If that's the case, you must escape them with a backslash. Or alternatively, you can use single quotes within the string, in which case you don't need to escape them. So just something just to watch out for with the double quotes. Otherwise, you'll end up with errors, and you'll be trying to figure it out. So then you can use style blocks. In this case here, what I'm doing is I'm actually creating classes within the style block, and then I'm calling my class within the string and the HTML element beneath. Okay. So just to give a kind of quick review of how we go about it. So we use a string variable to create the dynamic content. We save the string variable in a rich text field. We then create a record summary template. We add a paragraph to that, and then we add the rich text field to the paragraph. And we will go ahead and show you how we go about this. So this is our code to create our invoice. So as you can see here, this top piece up here, I have my style block, which is here, and that's controlling how my elements are being displayed. And then my string down here, so I have my HTML elements, and I have calling the class or the inline CSS as needed. To control the columns in the template, we're using a variable to get how many columns we need. So I'm saying if we've ticked the box, we need 5. If we haven't ticked it, we only need 4. And then when we iterate over the rows of the items, we check to see if the row needs to be excluded or not, in which case we just ignore it. If we're not ignoring it, then we add it. And again, within that, we're checking if we're adding the column based on the number of columns in our col span variable. So we're saying if we have 5, we know we want to add in that extra column. If we don't have it, we want to ignore it. Then we go ahead and we do this again using the col span. It's to control the number of columns within the table within the HTML. And then we're closing our string, and then we're updating our rich text field. In this case, it's called dynamic invoice with the value of the string. Okay, and just to give you an example, this is how the template looks. There's one element, which is a paragraph, and within that, we're inserting the fields using the insert fields option on the top menu, and we insert that into the paragraph element on the template, and that's what gives us our dynamic templates. It's quite easy. Okay. Cool. Okay. So the next one we're going to look at is some custom reports with pages. In this case, sometimes it's not possible for the native reports to display in the way you like. So let's have a look at something, which is this. So this is an example of a report. In this case, it's a financial report. It's working trial balance. It's what accountants use when they're doing your end of year accounts. And this isn't possible with the native reports. As you probably imagine, we can't do the grouping like we do here. So, you know, we want to have more than one group. We want to display them on separate lines. In native reports, that isn't possible. We also want to do a total for each group. And then we have subgroups, so we actually want to do totals for the subgroups and totals for the the groups and subgroups in this. Yes, so as I say, this type of report has been made using a page. It's not entirely possible to do it or use the native reports to produce something just exactly like this. And just to give you an example, we have some drop downs here which we can change, which will actually bring us to other pages from within this page, which will change some of the values and doing that. And we can also do some printing or PDF from these as well, so we can create a nice printed report. Okay. All right. Go back to this one. Okay, can also give you an example here. So the same thing with the invoice that we just looked at as the template, or the dynamic template, the invoice. We can also create the same thing using a page. So now we're actually looking at the same example using a page. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so a couple of things to go through when you're creating pages and using HTML with Deluge in a HTML snippet. So this is just very basic, you know, you create your page, choose snippets, drag your HTML snippet onto your page. And when you do that, you will see that you're left with these brackets. You've angle brackets, percentage sign, then you have a curly bracket, percentage sign, angle bracket again. So the angle brackets and percentage signs, so these denote where we're going to have our Deluge statements. And when we close with the percentage sign and the greater than symbol or the right angle bracket, that denotes where we're now going into HTML. So everything between them will be in HTML, and we'll give you an example now of how this works. So, for instance, if I wanted to fetch a record within the HTML page, I can fetch it before I escape with the closing Deluge bracket or opening HTML bracket, and then I can add my HTML in there. I can then escape the HTML back into Deluge, which, if you see here on the right, will iterate over our subform rows. And then within those, I'm escaping the Deluge again back into HTML. And then when we are in HTML, you'll see the blue colored angle brackets with percentage signs and an equal sign. And what this denotes is that I want to use the value between these brackets within the HTML. So I want to display this value in the HTML. As you can see, we do that for each table cell in this case that we want. We then have to escape the HTML back into Deluge, and again escape the Deluge back into HTML, and then after the HTML again back into Deluge in our closing curly bracket at the end. So we'll give you another look at another way of doing it, which is to do what we've done in the form, which basically is use a string. So instead of actually constantly escaping and coming back into in and out of the HTML and Deluge, we can stay in Deluge and we can just use string variables and capture everything within the string. And at the end, we can put in our table between in our HTML by using these using the brackets with the equal sign after it and closing it again. Okay, so an example of this here. So our page. So as you can see here, we have our opening bracket at the top. We've into our HTML. In this case, so just to be aware, you can use style sheets from external sources. You can use Bootstrap. Most of it will work. There is some things that aren't supported, but a lot of it does work. Obviously, we're doing our style block here, and once we get in here, we're escaping out of our style block, and we're actually going back into our Deluge again. In this case, what we've done with the page, so just to go back, show you here, we've added a custom action here to view the invoice. So when we do that, we're actually passing through to the page the ID of the record that we want through to the page. And when we're in the page, in the HTML snippet, we're now checking if there is a value first. Obviously, if there's no value been passed through, we don't want to display anything because we'll just end up with an error. So we want to check if there's a value first, and if we do have a value, then we can go ahead and fetch that record. We do that by using the ID, but remember, any value passed through in the URL will be a string value, so we'll need to convert it to an integer. So we use too long to convert it back into an integer. Again, we're getting our call span variable like we did in the form, and then we escape our Deluge back into HTML again. And so as you can see here, it may be a little bit easier to read the HTML. If you're used to HTML, it may be a little bit easier to read it at this point within the page. And as you can see here, when you're within the HTML, to get the value from a Deluge variable, we use our angle bracket %sign equals our variable name, and then we can close with our %sign and angle bracket again. Okay, and you can see that here we have more examples of where we're doing that. Okay, and then we'll go down here. So in this case, again, we're escaping back into Deluge. We're going to iterate over the subform row. We're looking here to check if we want to exclude the subform row based on the variable, the decision box in the subform. Again, that could be a date field maybe, or whatever it is you want. You can decide on that. We'll then, each item or each table cell, we're putting into our Deluge. Again, we're using our call span within that. So as you can see, we're going in and out of Deluge into HTML, getting our values back again into Deluge, back again into HTML. So it can be a lot of back and forth in between them.
Damien,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this. Sorry. Where was? Yeah. So basically, escaping in and out of Deluge and HTML. So as I say, the angle brackets and the percentage sign. That's in whenever you see a percentage sign and an angle bracket, after that you will see HTML. Then when you see an angle bracket and a percentage sign after that, you will normally see Deluge. And you'll see at the very end, there will be a curly bracket, which if we highlight the curly bracket, we can go back up to the top, and that will be highlighted up the top here as well. Okay. All right, so just to give you an example of what this would look like here. So this is maybe if I zoom this in a bit. Yeah, so this is an example of a page created using HTML and Deluge. And if I go in here, I can give you an example of where, in this case, I used a string to capture the HTML, and at the bottom here we will see where I'm displaying it by using that. So the vast majority of the actual page is actually a string, which is then thrown into HTML. One of the things that I used in this particular instance was regex. I don't know if a lot of you might be aware of regex. So this is where you might want to reformat numbers. So in this case, you'll notice that we've colored some of the figures red and put and they're contained in brackets. So for financial reporting, the negative numbers are displayed in this manner. And to achieve that, we use some regex. So this is basically where we take the value. We know it's a negative value. We know it's and we know also that it's contained within certain characters, because I've done that within the string. Anytime I've put a value into the string, I've added some unique characters. In this case, it's squiggly line underscore squiggly line, and any numbers that fall between that, we replace them with a span. We put the value in, and then we close our span, and that's what produces our brackets and our red color. We only need to do that once, so we don't need to do it every time that, as you can see here, each time that I'm putting a value in, I don't need to check if it's a negative value at this point. I just do it on the overall string at the end. And then at the very end, I replace all of my special characters with nothing. It's essentially an empty string, so it removes all of those characters at the end of it. So we end up with a report. And end up with the report like this. Okay. Right. The other thing you can look at it is PDF. So with exporting PDFs, you can create the file name for a PDF. In this case, we're doing that down here, where we're actually taking the file name and we're appending onto it using the client name and the date that we want. And we then use the file name within the HTML here. We call it in, so that when someone goes to export that, they will automatically get the name of the file. Okay. And the file here is working trial balance. Save that. And you really look at the sample here, and with the PDF, you can actually get the header value to repeat on each page, and you can also get a page number at the on the footer of each page as well. Right. Just to give you an example of that. Okay. All right. Go back. There wasn't anything else. Okay. There was one other thing. So yes. So let me just do this. So in this case here, this is a slightly more advanced report where we don't just need to show we need to have dynamic columns in this report, and again I have some drop down menus which add in our dynamic columns. That's a bit better there. So these are some of the things you can achieve with HTML and CSS combined with Deluge. Okay, I think we're good on that one. Okay. All right. Forms. So let's have a look at some forms. So just the other day, I had a request from someone on how do you do a search in a report where you have an and requirement. So in this case, I'm trying to search this column here, review text, and the requirement is the words that I'm searching for, I need both to be present, but in the built-in search, that's not possible. It's either or. So we can't do an and search. So to do that, instead we built a form, and here we go, South Park, new, and we go season 3. Use our search. We click the box and select the one we want. And in this case, what we've done is using the add notes field and some HTML, I've been able to display the contents of that field and highlight the search values that we were looking for. So we can go ahead and, no, not that one. Sorry, I'm sorry, we have to do this. Okay, workflow, and input of, no, this one. Okay, so essentially what we're doing is we're fetching our review record, we get our review text, we iterate over the subform with each of the search words, and here again we're using our regex to find the search word, and we use a replace all. Our pattern is our regex with the search word contained in it, and again we replace all that with our span and background color and foreground or font color, which will give us our nice highlighted text. We then place the value of the review text within a div element, HTML element within the string, escaping our double quotes, and then displaying that in the add notes field. So that's how we do that. Okay. Right, so just where's this one then? Okay. So sometimes we like to show data to a user in a form, but we don't need to save it. That's where we use the add notes field. And an add notes field can be both static or dynamic. So it's, as I just shown you there, it's possible to update it through Deluge. There may be times when all you want to do is just have a static display of a particular message in a form to a user. In which case you can just add that into the add notes field, and it will remain static. Okay, we go back again. We kind of flew through all this. It'll take as long as we thought. Okay, so another thing we can do with our add notes field that I mentioned at the beginning was we can actually we can control some of the form. So in this case, what I've done is I've used the add notes field in combination with some CSS to display a radio button field as tabs. So we can choose which section of the form we want to display by choosing the tab. So this is just a radio button that, as I say, I've used some CSS to change how it looks, essentially, so that we can have tabs in the form instead of a radio button. Okay, and we can show you how that's done. So again, we're creating our string variable using a style block, and within that we're using classes or names here. So you do need to have some knowledge of CSS to understand this. A note to anyone who is going to do this, that this will only work with if you name the radio button field tabs. If you name it something else, you will need to change tabs within this to the name of your radio button field. Okay. Okay. So the other thing that I also did here with our add notes field was just to show an example of the displaying a file uploaded. So you want to preview a file that's in the system within a form, and we can do that again using an add notes field. So we can view that. Again, that can be made dynamic, so you can change which file you want to show, although the file would need to actually exist prior to you displaying it. And to do that, we use a add notes field, and we use an iframe. And in this case, we are just embedding a report into the iframe. Okay. That's all my examples. Did I show you everything? I did. I think I did. Okay. Yes. So I think there is a copy of the DS file that you can download if you need. I think other than that, yeah, we've kind of gone a bit.
So, guys, thank you for joining today's session. As you can see in the last slide, we also have like a new dedicated email address for contacting us, anything related to developers that is not certification related. Certified developers would already know that there is an email address, dedicated channel, certification at zohocreator.com. This is developers at zohocreator.com, and we would be using this a lot more from now on. So if you have any queries, please let us know using this email address. And thank you so much, Damien, for doing today's presentation. I would like to say that Damien is an example of what you can gain from the forums. So we from the creator team would like to encourage you to actually participate a lot more in the forums. So there is, it's a two-way street. So as much as you contribute to the community, it also gets back to you. So we kind of have a lot of budding new developers joining the community who are looking for a lot of help, and we would be really happy if you are able to contribute, as well as it could create so many opportunities for you in terms of with Zoho, as well as independent of Zoho, establishing yourself as an expert in Zoho Creator. The forums is a great place to be, so please do participate in the forums. Thank you, guys. With that, we end the session now.